All right, let's dive into one of the most fundamental and, frankly, one of the most unsettling questions of our digital age. It's this problem that's kind of bubbling just under the surface of everything we do online, and believe me, it is about to become front and center. I mean, really think about that for a second. Right now, as you're listening to this, AI can write articles, it can create unbelievable art, it can hold conversations that are, well, they're pretty much indistinguishable from a human's. So, in that kind of world, what's to stop one person or one AI from pretending to be a million different people? This isn't some far-off sci-fi problem anymore. It's a challenge that is right here, right now, and it's actively undermining online communities, governance, and trust as we speak. So, to even begin to understand the solutions, we've got to get crystal clear on the problem itself. This whole puzzle is known as proof of personhood, and it's something that basically everyone, from social media giants and crypto pioneers, all the way to the CEO of OpenAI, is desperately trying to solve. So what is it really? Well, at its core, proof of personhood is all about creating a verifiable link between our digital lives and our physical ones. The big goal here is to create a system that can issue a kind of digital passport. Now, this passport, it doesn't need your name or your address or your photo on it. All it needs to do is certify one simple but incredibly powerful fact, that the holder of this key is a unique human, and they don't have another one. Okay, so why should you care? Well, this is where it gets really interesting because the implications here are just massive. A Sybil attack, that's where one person or bot creates tons of fake identities, can completely torpedo any kind of democratic system online. Think about it. How can you have a fair one-person, one-vote system in a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, if one person can secretly cast a million votes? You just can't. It's impossible. And this goes way beyond just voting. People like Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, they argue that as AI creates just immense wealth, we're going to need systems like universal basic income. But how do you give everyone their fair share if you can't tell who everyone even is? Without proof of personhood, any UBI or token airdrop would be instantly sucked dry by bots. So the stakes for building a fair digital future are, well, they're enormous. Okay, quick pause. If you're finding this breakdown of our digital identity crisis valuable, could you do me a quick favor? Just take a second to hit like, subscribe to Digi-Gold, and share this explainer. And I'm genuinely curious to hear your ideas on this, so drop a comment below with your thoughts on how you'd prove you're human. We read every single one. So you can see the challenge is massive, right? In response, the developer community has pretty much split into three main camps, and each one has a totally different philosophical take on what actually makes us uniquely human. Let's break them down. First up, we've got biometrics. This school of thought basically says the most foolproof way to identify a unique human is through their unique biology. Think Worldcoin's iris scans. Then there's the social graph approach, used by projects like BrightID. This method argues that, hey, identity is social. You are real because other real people who we already trust say you are. It's all about a web of trust. And finally, we have the global Turing test, which is championed by projects like Idena. This approach argues that identity is proven through action, a synchronized action that proves you are a single, conscious person paying attention at a very specific moment in time. So what you are, who you know, or what you can do. These are the three competing philosophies out there. But this is where our investigation gets really, really complicated, because as we're about to see, there's no silver bullet here, not even close. Each one of these solutions forces us to make a really difficult and sometimes even dangerous trade-off between our core values, things like privacy, security, and decentralization. All right, let's start with the global Turing test and a project called Idena. Now, the core idea here is actually ingenious. At a very specific scheduled time, everyone on the network has to log in and solve a series of unique puzzles called flips. You get shown two sets of four images, and you have to decide which set tells a logical story. It's something that needs this intuitive, contextual understanding, which makes it pretty easy for a human, but incredibly hard for current AI. And crucially, because everyone does it at the exact same time, one person physically cannot solve enough of these puzzles to maintain multiple accounts. It's a defense against Sybil attacks based on the limits of human focus. But here's the reality. This slide shows actual transaction data from the Idena network, and I want you to look closely. You see dozens of different addresses, all of which successfully proved they were unique humans. And yet, almost immediately after they get their validation rewards, they all send those rewards to the exact same single address. This is a phenomenon known as puppeteering. A single operator is paying a whole group of people, like a human farm, to solve the test for them. So they all pass as unique humans, but all the power, all the rewards, it all flows to just one person. So in the end, the Turing test wasn't beaten by some super advanced AI. It was beaten by simple, old-fashioned economics. Okay, so if human action can be bought, what about our biology? Well, that leads us to the biometric approach, and its most famous, and definitely most controversial, example, Worldcoin. Their solution is this custom piece of hardware called the orb, which scans a user's iris to create a unique iris hash, basically a digital fingerprint of your eye. The idea is that your iris is totally unique to you, so it's the perfect key to prove you're one person. But as Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin points out, this solution comes with 4 massive risks. First, privacy. Okay, Worldcoin says it only stores a hash of your iris, but that hash is still a piece of you. Could it leak medical data? Could someone scan your eye and check the database to see if you have a World ID? Next, accessibility. There are billions of smartphones out there, but only a few hundred orbs. How do you make this system truly global and fair? Then there's centralization, and this is a huge one for the crypto space. The orb is a black box of hardware. How do we know the manufacturer, a single company, hasn't built a backdoor that lets them create infinite fake identities? And finally, security. What's to stop an authoritarian government from forcing its citizens to scan their irises, but linking them to a government-controlled wallet, basically stealing millions of digital identities? And this table just lays out the core dilemma perfectly, doesn't it? There is no free lunch here. Idena's Turing test is clever, but it's vulnerable to organized human labor. Worldcoin's biometrics are super unique, but they bring in massive centralization and security risks. And then you've got social graph systems like BrightID, which rely on these webs of trust. Their problem is scalability. They often end up becoming these exclusive clubs. If you don't already know someone in the system, it's almost impossible to get verified. Every single path has a major roadblock.
So if every solution we have right now is kind of broken, where do we possibly go from here? Well, the most promising new ideas are rethinking the entire problem. They're moving away from a one-time verification and towards something much more dynamic, treating identity not as a single event, but as a continuous, living process.
Enter a concept called the Human Challenge Oracle, or HCO. Let's look at how this builds on what we've seen. Instead of a single iris scan or one big validation event, an HCO would require you to prove you're human over and over again. To keep your digital identity active, you might have to solve a quick, unique challenge every day, or maybe even every hour, all cryptographically tied to your identity. The genius here is that it makes being fake insanely expensive. A puppeteer might be able to pay 100 people for a one-time scan, sure, but can they afford to pay 100 people to be on call 24/7 to solve real-time puzzles? The cost of fake an identity becomes continuous, which makes these huge, large-scale attacks economically impossible. All right, we are just about to land this thing. If this deep dive has given you a new way to think about digital identity, please take a moment to support our work by liking, subscribing to Digi-Gold, and sharing this explainer with someone who needs to understand what's coming. And in the end, it really all comes back to this quote from Vitalik Buterin. The search for a digital identity isn't just a technical problem, it's a philosophical one. Do we prioritize the privacy that comes from a social graph, even if it's not accessible to everyone? Do we accept the centralization risks of biometric hardware just to stop Sybil attacks? There is no answer that satisfies all of our ideals at the same time. So here's the bottom line. A solution is coming, because it has to. The digital world simply can't function with this level of rampant, undetectable impersonation. But that solution is going to demand a sacrifice, which leaves us with one final and perhaps the most important question of all. And this one's for you. To create a trusted, human-centric internet, what are you willing to give up? Your privacy, your security, or your anonymity? The choice we all make is going to define the next chapter of our digital lives.